I see so many of you came to celebrate the Solemnity of All Saints dressed as your favorite hopeful saint, yourselves, hopefully. I think that's one of the reasons I was asked before Mass, why is the feast, why is the All Saints a solemnity, a holy day of obligation? Well, I think it's more for us to remind ourselves that we want to be counted among that number one day, hopefully. And so it's an encouragement and a little kick in the rear. So it's a good way. It's good for us. It's good for us to join each year on this day. For a while, I wasn't. There was a period of time I wasn't reading a lot of saints' biographies. The way sometimes they were written, it was a little. It came like, at least in that particular period of my life, every time I read a saint biography, they always tended to write it with a little. There's a sense of unrealism. It's like, oh my goodness, he's idealistic, and it just, how the heck can I reach it? How can I, meet this? And so sometimes I didn't. But then a friend of mine gave me a biography of St. Thomas More one year, and he knew that I was a fan of, and he was one of my favorite saints. And so he gave me a biography, and I believe the thing was by a gentleman named Peter Abbott was the biographer. And I found this particular biography a little different. It presented Thomas as coming from a devout family, but being no more or less Christian or Catholic than those around him. He seemed very relatable. Yeah. What I came to learn as I was reading this biography, in his early years as a lawyer, Thomas was even quite duplicitous. Now, he was an independent thinker, and together with, he had a Dutch friend named Desiderius Erasmus, he framed new ways of stating the truth of the Christian life. For instance, his famous book, Utopia, was a satire on the so-called Christian states of his day. And his ideas were quite extraordinary for their time, but not excessive. When Martin Luther challenged the authority of the church, the sacraments, etc., More responded with a vicious attack that would raise as many of our eyebrows as Luther's theses. But then something happened that transformed Thomas More from a Christian of his day to a saint for the ages, or as Erasmus would later call him, or as we would know him, the popular name for a movie done on him, became a man for all seasons. More had to choose between his conscience and his king, his faith and his social position, his life and his death. If you visit the Tower of London, the Beefeater Guide will point out the area of the prison where More was confined, the place in the courtyard where he was beheaded, and the common grave in the chapel where his body was dumped. What the guide misses is the agony that More went through while waiting for his death. See, he loved his family dearly and had to endure their constant pleading with him to give in to the king. This was the King Henry VIII who had, because the Pope wouldn't annul his latest marriage, he broke away. And More was he became the only, state official to resist the king, to try to encourage him to maintain fidelity to the church. And for this is what he endured. And he prayed continually for forgiveness of all his sins. I mean, I can only imagine in this moment, he looked back in his earlier years and was like, ooh, this was an opportunity to to confront all those moments, sometimes, as a lawyer, as a politician, all his duplicitous moments. He was confronted with the questionable decisions he had made in his career. He had nightmares about the sentence of treason, which would be the grueling hang, drawn, and quartered. When at the last minute the king commuted his sentence to just simply beheading, he felt that he had been given a great mercy. Thomas More was a very real, very imperfect Christian who was called to make a radical decision for the Lord. And he embraced this decision as an authentic reflection of whom he is. And so his determination to be his best self helps us to make far less demanding choices in our lives to be our best selves. So the Solemnity of All Saints doesn't just remind us of those who have made a radical decision to follow the Lord. The Solemnity of All Saints calls us to look at our own lives and to seek out our true Christian persona. So we ask the saints today to help us have the courage to radiate the presence of Christ in our lives.